Our guest today is University of Washington Law Librarian Jonathan Franklin. Very pleased to
Okay.
have him here. He's going to come on the show to help us talk about the recent landmark Anthropic settlement on AI development. So, welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think we were talking about this. When I first heard about these lawsuits, it was quite an eye opener because they sort of pointed to an issue that I kind of knew subconsciously, but I didn't realize all the information in the search engines that they are, using um, belongs to other sources. And I knew that, but I just didn't really. And so now you have almost any search you go on Google now, you have AI pulling up a summary. So can you first, Jonathan, tell us what does a law librarian do, and how did you come into this profession?
Oh, a law librarian can be many things. And so I think there are the degrees that you have. And so there's a master's library science, which you can get from an information school or a library school. And then some folks have JDs, a law degree, in addition. And so then there are many types of libraries that people go into and many other jobs that a law librarian can do.
Right.
So, for example, you might work at a law firm doing research or doing
Oh,
training or doing all sorts of other things
yeah.
within a law firm. You could also work in a county or a court library, helping patrons who walk in the front door who need forms, who need help. And you're really the friendly face often in the courthouse to help people navigate a very, very complex legal system.
Would it be safe to say law libraries are they're master bureaucrats?
I think the goal is to deliver as much as we possibly can to the patrons and to help them
Yeah.
up to providing legal advice.
Right. So you're not providing legal advice, but you're
Correct.
fighting it.
We're providing sources, we're
Right.
providing suggestions about where to look,
Yeah.
and we're also doing teaching and training.
Yeah, I see. Well, I mean, I think in law, all the references there, as we were saying, they're high stake references. They're not like normal searches that people go do because they usually have like legal impacts and um. So I did want to ask you, how did you become interested in the Anthropic settlements, or sort of? I think these are the legal lawsuits for language
Yeah.
learning models, right?
So it started a long time ago.
Ah,
I worked on a project a long time ago, uh, before copyright was popular or even known, really, that involved scanning auction catalogs and providing data to other people.
oh,
And what
interesting.
I learned was that some auction houses have the rights to the photos and the descriptions in their catalogs, and others don't.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
So that project got stopped. And then I got interested in copyright because I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
That got me to law school.
Ah.
And then I learned about copyright and took a lot more classes.
Oh, interesting.
And then
So
uh,
you're a law librarian with
I
a
am.
JD. Interesting.
But
Oh.
I think that affects the way that you look at the world in some very distinctive ways. I think law school does teach certain ways of, we'll call it thinking like a lawyer. And some of them are really great for law librarianship, and others are completely irrelevant.
Wow,
And
interesting.
it's an interesting combination
Yeah.
because as a person, I like to help people and share information. And if I can help someone up to the line of providing legal information, I will happily do it.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas law is often, there's an hourly rate and you have to make a living, and there's a whole different business model to the enterprise.
Yeah.
Um, and so I found that librarianship really suited me and my attitude towards a lot of things. So I went to library school and then became a law librarian.
Oh, I see. Well, I
Uh,
mean, the thing is that, I was recently doing research for my grant,
mhm.
and it was invaluable. I finally went to the library and asked a librarian, and that was so instrumental to getting specifically the information that I needed. I think that people kind of forget the resource that's there, especially as you sort of develop professionally. You forget that there's a lot of resource there that you can access.
Yeah, I think, to the extent that librarians are the original search engine, uh,
Exactly.
we often know about sources that aren't easily findable or that
Yes.
are only in print. And
Yes.
so there's a new generation, and I don't blame them because I think that's just the way you grow up, that doesn't know that a book has an index or a table of contents, or that there are these things that used to be made that are no longer made. You have no reason to know that these things exist, but librarians can help you often find stuff and navigate the print world as well as
Yes.
the electronic.
Yes, I think there's ongoing. I've heard all sorts of funny stories. Like Wikipedia is not a reliable or an academic source.
I think that's really an issue that has happened over time, and it's just becoming easier and easier to get information.
Yeah,
And the quality of it, I think the interesting thing is law in the high stakes world of lawsuits,
yeah,
you want as close to 100% quality, certainty, etc.
right.
But in daily life, if you're planning a trip to San Francisco and you want an itinerary, is 80% of an itinerary that's it's not perfect, but it took you 5 minutes.
True, exactly.
Maybe that's
No,
okay.
well, no, and definitely, you're looking at search engines like Google have literally changed, a lot of people's lifestyles,
Yeah.
and made things much more accessible, and it's a wonderful thing, of course. Um, but so let's talk about specifically the lawsuit for Anthropic, and if you could just sort of give us maybe a background on it.
Yeah.
I did want to, I was doing readings on Anthropic, and I didn't realize, sort of in the world of AI, Anthropic are kind of the good guys. They're trying to
Yep.
develop safety protocols. They're trying to do this with some guidance. And I think it's ironic that they got slapped at the first.
Well, on one hand, everybody is a good guy and a bad guy in this particular universe right now, and I will back that up. I'm not just gonna speak in platitudes, but there's such a race right now, and there is so much money, and there is also the tension, the geopolitical tensions between the U.S. and other countries that are
Yes.
advancing. That you have all these layers of national security. You have people who funded one company but not another, who want a return on their investment. You now see NVIDIA investing in an AI company that invested in a chip company that invested in, these chains of money and the complexity, the
Yes.
tangle, means that
So true.
everybody is both, I think, a good guy in that many of them are acting in what they think is a responsible way. And
Yeah.
we could talk more about that.
Right.
There's some people who feel that AI going as quickly as possible into AI in this world is going to lead to problems that solve the environment, that solve the climate crisis, that solve pharmaceutical development. And
Yeah.
therefore, acceleration is the way to go, right?
Well, and it's definitely sweeping in application like that. It definitely
Yeah.
is one of those.
Yeah. And at the same time, aside from the others who think that this is a problem and we have to stop it, and I understand that perspective, and we can talk more about that, but I don't see it happening given the current environment.
Yeah.
Stepping back, if you look at how these were trained, they are basically mathematical machines, and they do predict what the next word will be. And so if I have a sentence that says, I'm going to withdraw money from it will probably fill in ATM or bank or something.
Right.
Now, the way it got there is because it was trained on other documents. And it looks at, well, what follows this sequence of words? And I'm oversimplifying. There are a lot of mathematical formulas that take into account far more.
Right.
But roughly it says, well, this is the likely thing that follows that string of words. And so to do that, you need to have ingested or absorbed or internalized a huge amount of data to be able to draw a good conclusion.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the aspect of the lawsuits is really having to do with, well, I wanted to absorb all this information, but it was really a hassle to talk to every author and get rights to their specific book.
Oh, I see.
So why don't we just ingest it
Yeah.
and see what happens. Right? I mean, I think that people have argued that that's perfectly fine,
Yeah.
and we can talk more about that. And other people have said that's absolutely not okay, and that's the entire reason the copyright system exists is so that you won't copy our stuff and reuse it without our permission or without paying for it.
Well, isn't I mean, I think, for a certain stage of development, it's necessary, right? They couldn't
Mhm.
possibly develop their but I think after we're sort of beyond that point now. And that's why the
Yeah.
lawsuits are coming in.
Yes. I mean, I think people envisioned the lawsuits a while ago, because they were angry that their works, individual works, were showing up. Either they knew that it was on a list, a book in a list of books that these companies ingested. And there are a couple Atlantic articles that are really excellent talking about Books 3, which is this huge database of 200,000 books. Right. And so if a company gets access to that, they just ingest all those books, and their model is much better, but I don't know that until the settlement, there was a mechanism for paying each individual author in the way that this settlement
I
may be
understand.
facilitated.
Yeah, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Um, Now, it's my understanding the Writers Guild from all the Writers Guild and SAG, all that legal rulings, you can't actually, an AI cannot actually be a writer. Is that
Right. So
okay?
there are two parts that are really interesting to this. The first thing is how you get the stuff into the AI,
Yeah.
right? And then what is the legal status of the stuff that comes out of the AI?
Right.
And
Right.
so for a lot of the challenges that we're facing now, we're sort of merging. We talk about them together,
Yeah.
but they're really kind of separate in the
Yeah.
sense that if I use AI to completely write a book, now that might not happen now, but if it happens, the Copyright Office has said that it isn't protectable because it was written by
Yeah.
AI, not, and there is no author associated with it.
Right. Right.
But let's say that I write a book and it's the first draft, and then I start to edit it. And I edit it so that in the end, there are only 4 words that the AI used in the whole book. I've kind
Oh,
of transformed it, right? The AI didn't
yeah.
really write it. I wrote it, but I used AI for the starting draft.
Right. Interesting.
So I don't know, there's some line, right, along that
Yeah.
continuum, and I don't know where the dot is, where it stops being AI generated and starts being human authored.
Well, and part of I think I certainly ask people about this. Part of the problem is that it's my understanding there's no other model for intelligence except the human model. So they had to use all the human language learning that they understood. Because I asked them, I said, why would you why would you try to develop intelligence based on human? Humans are a questionable and volatile species.
Yeah, yeah.
Are they a reliable model for that? It's like, so of course,
I think that one of the benefits of AI is that we know how to interact with it, much like the movie and the book Arrival
oh,
by Ted
interesting.
Chiang. We have to learn to communicate with other species, and that
Yeah,
often involves another way of thinking completely.
yeah, yeah,
And it's very hard for most people to adapt to another way of thinking, even a foreign culture, which is
yeah.
a
It's true.
slightly foreign,
Right,
slightly other way of thinking.
right.
Um, but there are probably many intelligences, and they could be modeled on. It just so happens that this one we had a human record of, luckily written, right? Because you can't ingest oral content to the extent that most of it wasn't recorded
Right.
until writing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But we have all of this writing that can be ingested, so it can create a corpus from which to build an intelligence.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that gets us to the epistemological question, right? Because
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
you know what you know, and why is it? Is it really knowledge, or is it just?
Yeah. And I think it's amazing because this is where brain science is now doing these experiments to try to figure out, is my version of reality similar or different to your version of reality?
Yeah,
Is there
yeah,
what is shared, what isn't?
right.
And what is covered by words, but we really mean different things by those words?
Yeah. Well,
That's
no,
an
it's
amazing
true.
time.
I mean, especially if you do any fiction writing at all, this is
Yeah.
what do these words mean, and how many different ways can they be interpreted?
Yeah.
Um, but can you talk a little about the model collapse? Because I was kind of shocked when I
Yeah.
read about that because I had no idea. And
So I think that if you take all of human history that has written, or oral traditions that have been recorded, and you put those into a bucket, right? You have a body from which to work and from which to learn, and maybe from which to use those mathematical models to generate the most likely answer or something like that.
right, right.
If we start to then add to that bucket all the stuff that the AI generates based on that bucket.
They call it synthetic
Yeah.
knowledge, right? Yes.
So we're adding, if we start to say, oh, well, we're adding all this synthetic knowledge and it makes the system better, it may make the system better,
Yeah.
but it also might become an echo chamber where it just kind of repeats itself and the
Yeah.
model doesn't get any better or gets worse because it's driven by more and more and more synthetic data.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I found this to be fascinating that right now, currently, the status now that it needs human generated knowledge.
yeah.
And the question is why, right? What's the difference, right? So it's really interesting.
I think so. And I mean, I think the incentive to create isn't over,
Yeah.
I hope, and that people will continue to write, whether with AI assistance or
Yeah.
not with AI assistance,
Yeah.
but they will add their own imprint and their own perspective and their own experiences.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, if the majority of books and text through time has all been written by dead white guys
Yeah.
and or dead guys, let's say, rather than women, to include
Right.
other cultures, then that's already a sort of an echo chamber, right? It repeats
Yes.
a majoritarian view because of the
Yes.
way the math works.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. You're absolutely right. I mean, this is I've struggled with this myself.
Yeah, and I think that one of the challenges is if AI has that particular perspective because the math
Right.
overwhelmingly repeats that,
Yeah.
then using synthetic data only reinforces that.
Yes.
And so
Myopia, in a way.
now there are ways to get around it, but you have to be very intentional about asking, and this has to do with prompting. So if you ask a prompt to give you a certain perspective,
Yeah.
then maybe it will change the worldview in a way that if you are empathetic and you understand someone else, you're able to maybe think about what they think and feel rather than what the majority of people think and feel in that scenario.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even humans struggle with this all the time. How do I know what I do? I really how do I know what I really know? Right?
Mhm.
How can you always check that? You have a limited perspective. I've certainly experienced this a lot
Right.
as a startup founder. It's like, oh, I should have done it that way, but I didn't know. I didn't
Yeah.
even know the question I should have asked to go
And
down that road.
that's part of learning, I think. And, one of the things that people are dealing with right now in education is what you were mentioning earlier, that AI, as used by students,
Yeah.
makes the task of getting an A easier.
Yes. Yes.
But whether it makes learning easier is a very different question. What are you learning? Does learning need to have some struggle, some pain, some challenge to it to actually internalize those lessons that you've learned as a founder
Yes. Yes.
versus asking an AI to generate a business plan, following the business plan, but not having really understood what you were doing or why you were doing it?
Yes. No, it's true. It's true. I think that this is exemplified very humorously in the reference that you gave me about God.
Yeah.
God and his technicians trying to figure out if trying to just diagnose human intelligence, right? That's kind of.
This is an article, and I use it as a thought experiment because I think that a lot of people who are unhappy with AI right now, the state of AI is probably the worst it will ever be. So it's only going to get better. I'll leave that. That is a value-laden word. So I will just say that it will become likely more and more prevalent and more human-like in certain ways. Okay.
Yeah.
You might see that as better or worse. I'll leave it there. But at the same time, we look at it the way in this article, a deity looks at humans and
Yes.
says, "Oh, well, these humans, they're okay, but they have these limitations and they can't do this and that. And are they really smart just because they, go, they go and they pick a berry and it makes them sick, so they don't eat it again? Is that
We
is
will
that
be
intelligence?"
we will be leaving the link for this. It's just hilarious, this discussion, and you can imagine, like, oh yeah, because we never think of that perspective, right? We've always been here as far as we know, and we don't know where we came from, but we're here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I find it's of course there's all these questions that if you had told me when I was in college that a survey course on philosophy for knowledge and what is knowledge would become centrally relevant in the business world and the
Yeah.
political economics, yeah, I would have laughed. It was just like
Yeah.
it seemed like such a useless question to me. Like, okay, it's important for me, my development to go over, but who's going to care about this stuff? But
Yeah.
here we are.
Well, and I think even if you look at businesses that used to have file rooms, right? And
Yeah.
now we're finding all the knowledge that can be extracted from those files that show, I don't know, monthly trends or who knows what, or uncollected bills, all this
Right.
stuff that helps your business that was relegated to a file room or a drawer that never got opened.
Right. Right.
And with that awareness that everything becomes useful, it's overwhelming.
It is. I mean, this is, we can touch briefly on data science. Data
Yeah.
science it's so crazy. Um, and I often feel that this is the greatest passion of our times is this. You've got to collate and quantify every bit of your life and thought. And it's just, why are we doing this? But
Yeah, I think there's a desire to get every edge now, whether it's
yeah,
in analytics in sports or in fine tuning a business model to within an inch of its uh, life. But I think the other thing is that we as humans aren't necessarily well suited. We often see causation where it's merely a correlation between two
oh,
things.
that's interesting. Yeah.
And so we're not that great also at probability and some other factors. And so it'll be interesting to see whether AI is helpful in these areas or whether it really replicates our shortcomings and our
Absolutely.
blind spots.
Back to the Anthropic
Mhm.
settlement and sort of Anthropic. Can you give us a little background on the company and then the lawsuit and how?
Yeah. So Anthropic is like other companies out there. Some design their systems to have more guardrails. And what a guardrail does is it prevents you from using the system in certain ways.
Got it.
Okay. And different people who run these companies have very different visions of what AI should and shouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
And it's likely that we're heading into a future that isn't a monolithic AI. You might use, one, and I might use another, and they
Right.
might actually come to different conclusions for a
Yes.
variety of reasons.
Right. Right.
And even if they are trained on the same underlying data set or a similar underlying data set, the prompting that you use and the underlying structures that are in place between the data and the user
Yes.
can affect the results a great deal.
Ah, interesting.
So I think we can't paint all companies the same. I think some have, a more socially aware models that are designed to be aware of this is an issue that I either need to flag or be aware of, or it's a warning
Right.
sign. Whereas other people with maybe more libertarian ideals think anything goes. Uh, Now, I think there's a challenge in this because if you think anything goes, then the worst actor can use that tool to do the
Yes.
worst thing.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
and so I guess it comes back honestly to how much faith you have in humanity rather than AI.
And we have evidence for faith in humanity all over the place now.
But to the extent that Anthropic is a company that has founders and has people who've invested in it,
Yeah.
one of the things that they did and that other companies did is they used these huge databases of copyrighted material
Yeah.
to train their models. And so what they would do is they would ingest that content,
Mhm.
and then what they would do is they would basically break it down into smaller pieces and
Yeah.
analyze it all mathematically,
Oh,
and then
I
start to
see.
create models based on the most likely responses to a certain set of words. And if you think about it, it's really just a sophisticated version of autocomplete. So if you want to see, like, you type into Google or something else and you see what it thinks the next word is going to be, and if somebody just dropped an album or they're really hot for some other reason, then that name will show up. Otherwise, somebody else's name might show up. And it's a very fluctuating sort of thing to guess what somebody's going to want.
Yeah.
But that anticipatory approach to things is sort of underlying at least what AI is trying to solve and address for humans,
Right. Right.
is to give us what we want with some problems there.
And also, of course, the sorting capabilities, right? To
Yes.
sort through vast amounts of information that we that was the reference in the God
Yeah.
analogy of humans. They can't sort through all this data very fast. They're slow.
Yeah. And there are articles coming out now from PhD students who said, I spent 3 years of my life doing X, and now it can be done within a day.
Yeah.
So the human enterprise and what has been done is the ability to deal with that much data is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um,
And we
and
are at that era.
we,
because we
we're
just
at the
have
start
so
of that
much.
era.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on how predictable humans are. I don't know how predictable we are. When I leave this office and my smart glasses, which I'm not wearing, no, I don't have any, give me an advertisement for a restaurant down the street. Is it going to know that I really want hummus? I don't know. Am I that predictable? Am I really just a mathematical model? I don't know that. So I leave that aside. But to get all of the data into these models and all of that writing meant that they were copying a lot of books, right?
Yeah.
And so what the settlement is looking at is saying, well, we have to find a way to pay all those people whose books we copied
Oh, I see. I see.
and give them money back. And it had to be an agreement between really the Anthropic and the writers,
Right.
and also the judge had to sign off on this agreement.
Right.
And so right now it's $1.5 billion.
That's which is
a B.
Exactly. And that's just phenomenal.
And it comes down, I believe they were saying, to about $3,000 per book that was ingested.
Wow.
So on one side, I think that there's a challenge to this because let's say you wrote a bestseller and I wrote a book from an academic press that sold 4 copies. How do we value that?
Yeah.
And I think that there are different models. Music has a model, different other industries have models. So the division of money was one thing that Anthropic is not involved in, and I think is probably very glad that they're
Yeah.
not involved in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing about this is that the agreement says that the transforming of those books, like if you got all that stuff legally,
Right.
that the transformation of it into an AI is legal,
Yeah.
that it's transformative.
Right.
And so I think some have said that what happened was Anthropic basically paid this because they could have been liable for more.
Oh, I see.
And so this way, the authors get a settlement that they agree to,
right.
and Anthropic effectively now can continue to do their work without the burden of these books not being,
If they restricted
Yeah.
their use at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. And so I guess we'll have to wait to see what New York Times.
Yeah.
Because it's my understanding behind New York Times is a whole bunch of other groups that are
There
looking
are.
to this.
And I think each industry is looking at it a little bit differently.
Interesting.
And also I think that the companies that have content that
Yeah.
used to make it freely available
yeah.
are now realizing that was a huge asset. And it wasn't really an asset other than
Right.
selling advertising to humans
Exactly. I mean,
until now.
well, it's hard, for knowledge, it's really hard to put a financial, a number
Yeah.
to the value of that, because some of that information is incredibly valuable to a population that simply wouldn't be able to pay for it.
Yes.
There's a lot of learning knowledge out there like that.
And there are some models and some people who are trying to address that. I'm not going to say that it's all or nothing. For
Yeah.
example, let's say that I gave you I don't know, 10 or 100 free articles a year. But I said, if you want access to our entire body of work, you have to pay a huge amount.
Yeah.
But then maybe you're meeting some kind of public good while also monetizing your biggest asset.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'm not sure what's in the public interest at the moment.
Well,
We're
and
all trying
as
to figure that out.
yeah, I mean, especially, if you're developing a new product, there's a lot of, you're not in a position, you're not, for instance, a lot of startups are in this position where they need access to a lot of things. They just, they have a financial block to
Mhm.
that in their early stage. So early stage development, supporting that, I think it's important, it's valuable, because it's a long leap from them to develop that prototype and then go to commercialization. That's,
Yeah.
the path that everyone dies in. It's not an easy path. And
No,
so, but having developed that whatever, they're creating still adds value to the community.
absolutely.
So,
And I think that's where, I mean, that's really part of why, oddly enough, people are proud of their failed startups. Right? Normally, you don't
exactly.
advertise, oh, I had 3 businesses that didn't take off, right? But
Yes,
in this
yes.
world, you've learned.
Yeah.
You've played the long game
Yeah.
and you've lost the game a couple times, but that leaves you better prepared for the next time.
So true. So true. It's very difficult to come to that position though after you fail. You fail again, you fail again. And, I mean, there's several when I was in my early, I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this? This is not my space, not my wheelhouse. And it's not going well for me.
Mhm.
And you have this prolonged perspective where, am I ever going to get my product to market? It's never going to happen. It's very
Yeah,
difficult.
it is. And I think in this time of volatility, I think it's a challenge because the environment in which you create the plan and which you envision it may be very different from the environment in which you deploy it or roll it
Yeah.
out or even get to a stage of feasibility. And so, it
Already
must be
there.
incredibly stressful.
Already there.
And I think AI is going to add to that in
Yeah.
some ways, but it also might accelerate the cycle of creation and production. We're just going to have to see how and whether. I mean, because I'm not qualified to talk a lot about patent law,
Right.
but one of the areas that people are looking is, well, what is going to happen if AI just starts generating all this patentable content? And patent law is different from copyright. It has different
Interesting.
roles in society and different registration system.
Just
But
gave me an idea for a follow-up podcast. I know who I'm going to talk to next.
yeah,
Look out,
we
Rob.
can
I'm
leave.
coming for you.
But as we see these systems evolve, I think it's going to be fascinating to understand, and it's both profound in terms of what is human, like human creation, human creativity. I think right now we're saying, oh, these machines just spit out slop and synthetic data,
Yes.
and I don't know if that is always the case. I think the challenge for authors in particular is that the way books are sold now isn't necessarily that you go to a bookstore and look through a book and evaluate it, or even read a review. If you
Yeah.
click on a book to buy it for your e-reader, you may not know that much about the book and its provenance.
Exactly.
So,
Very few people pay attention to that, actually.
yeah.
But it is important. I think it's important and significant, and I guess that's sort of where the legal stuff is going, right? It's
So-
sort of it's this whole back industry of knowledge and writing and creation
Mhm.
that the public has very little insight into.
Well, I think the legal industry will be interesting partly because I can imagine, and this gets to, how sometimes you have a trademark that might say, either made in the USA or might say something else, made native made,
Right.
things that mean something, a certification of authenticity or of source or origin.
Right.
And I can imagine at some point we're going to get to like, this is a human created book.
Oh, interesting.
or something else that will at least denote for people that
The distinction.
this now it may be a great author,
Yeah.
it may be a terrible author,
Yeah.
and it may be a great AI author and a terrible
Yeah.
AI author. So I don't know if that's going to do any good, but I think for those who want to support human authors, there will likely be ways to do that in the future.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity to promote diversity in AI.
Yes. Oh, and I think there are
Because
huge reasons
yes,
why that's
exactly. In the same
necessary.
way, people have always talked about diversity is great for, education, community. You have if we end up in a world where there are different AIs,
Hmm.
with different safeguards or different, focuses, then we have it's a different scenario, right? Than from having one super mind that's going to basically control.
Yeah.
And even in society, we can see this, in a country as complex as the US, where you have many different geopolitical sectors,
Hmm.
community, differences and dynamics, and the um, it creates for a more robust
Hmm.
um, society. And
And I think that one of the things that we haven't talked about is language. A lot of what's going on in AI right now is English language
yeah,
but I think that as systems ingest other languages and maybe only language things written in that language,
yeah,
you will then have a different cultural perspective.
interesting,
You might not have as much to train on because the body of work will be smaller that you can feed in.
right? Oh,
But it might be that if it's also the way somebody speaking another language, you think a little bit differently when you speak a different language,
absolutely.
that may come out in these AIs as well. I have no idea what will come out of this and whether it will just reinforce stereotypes, but it's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah,
I mean, because as we try to look at what culture is and how to preserve culture, or if, to the extent that we desire to do that, we're going to have to think about how AI homogenizes
yeah.
versus maintaining some heterogeneity.
Well, and that's it's even true for our educational systems,
Yep.
which are largely, in this country, largely very Anglophilic and
Hmm.
have, I should say, a lot of dead white guys that are
Yeah, I mean,
the
and that's
legacy of dead white guys in
the
ours.
privilege of who was allowed to write and get published,
Yes,
and those
yes,
sorts of systems of the past,
right.
lead to what we can train these things on.
Yes, no, it's true.
Um,
I haven't even considered that, but these are sort of intangibles that you can't really quantify, but they're actually very influential,
mhm.
I think.
And I think that we're going to see that even more. I'm not going to say, I think text is in some way more benign. It's insidious, but benign.
Yeah.
I think the other place that we're going to see it as, and this is in image and movie
Yes,
generation and
yes,
things like that.
yes.
And they've done the studies that show the accountant is often a white guy and the basketball player is often a black guy. And this is not saying I want this ethnicity. It's
Yeah.
saying I want a picture of a basketball player
Yeah. Yeah.
and what comes up.
Right.
So I think that
Interesting.
we're going to have to fight also the self-reinforcing stereotypes in images and motion pictures as well.
Yeah. In many ways, this puts a reflection on us because the problems that they face are literally problems that certain segments of society still face, right?
Absolutely.
They're very insular in their exposure.
Yeah.
And I had a friend, she's talking about how she had a cultural, when you actually travel to a foreign country, like she was a Caucasian person, she traveled to Asia,
Mhm.
and she was surrounded by Asian people, and she says, you never really know what racism is until you are not the dominant culture and you're there among other cultures, right? And then you understand all the nuances of that
Right.
happen.
And that's what's so important, I think, about, and that's why this discussion is so important, is awareness of that fact is
Yeah.
the first step.
Yeah, absolutely.
That if you don't take that AI is for granted and what it says is the truth,
Yeah.
but question at least what it says. Yes, it hallucinates. Yes, it has all these other challenges that you should not,
They're
take any
shockingly
medical cure based on what AI tells you or something of the sort, but also realizing the underlying sort of how we got here and why things are the way they are.
Yes, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, I thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing. This has been, obviously, this is a very important topic. Um, and I feel like not enough of it has really been discussed in a more, in a less fear mongering atmosphere.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time because there are skeptics
Yeah.
of AI. There are people who see it as sort of society changing on a fundamental scale, like more than the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
And then there are, critics of certain aspects to it, but also seeing the upsides
Yeah,
that this might actually help people more than it hurts them. It's clearly a double-edged sword,
totally.
but we don't know how it's going to play out.
No.
And we're going to be here to see it,
Yes,
likely, given the rate
unfortunately.
of change.
We're going to be here to see it and experience the impact.
Yep. And if you understand why you're being fed the ads you're fed, or why you're being given the data you're given,
Yeah.
and you're at least a little bit critical, I think that's going to help with information literacy and AI literacy.
Oh, no.
And that's kind of the
No,
baseline for what we need.
Exactly. I mean, that's really where we're going. We're in a world where data science is going to impact every aspect of our life,
Yeah.
and we need to understand, how it's accumulated.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. We hope to keep in touch with you for the
Great.
ongoing. I think there's the New York Times lawsuit still
Mm.
happening. I was hoping to get some people from the Writers Guild too,
Mhm.
so that would be interesting.
Yeah. I th-
Um,
I think that's a very important perspective, and
Yeah.
why writers write, and will AI and these agreements change why writers write,
yeah.
or will it not at all? And obviously it'll be different for different people, but I
Yes.
think for some it'll be demoralizing and demotivating, and for others it may be empowering to
Yeah.
realize that they have something special to say that isn't something that could be generated by one of these systems.
Well, the thing is, I think, I think a lot of people think that fiction, I have a fiction writing background. People think fiction writers write things out of your head, but actually we don't. There's a lot of research that's done for verisimilitude, which
Mhm.
is an important, to have any sort of impact or power. You look to the examples in human life around you.
Well, and that's one of the discussions that people are having on an ongoing basis is a human artist, how is a human artist different from somebody who's just drawn on ingested their life
Right.
experience,
Right. No, exactly.
and uses that to inform their own work?
It's like they tell you, write what you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That
can't
makes
do
a lot of
anything else.
sense.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Well, thank you again for coming down to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Hey.
We hope to keep in touch. And for anyone there who's looking for information, use your librarians.
Yep.
They have so much information, and they're expert searchers. That's what I want to say. Really, that was like game changing for when I was going through my last proposal draft.
Yeah, we're here to help, and we want to help people. So if you come to us with a question, that's the joy. That's really what brought me into librarianship, is wanting to help people and connect people with information.
Yes, yes. And it's much deeper knowledge, and maybe access to more obscure references that you wouldn't readily pull up on Google. So, thank you.